Hi, everybody. This is Gino Vanelli. You're listening to Rainbow Country with Mark Tara.
The views and opinions expressed on the following program are those of the persons appearing on the program.
Today on Rainbow Country, queer resilience. Sanford-educated former CEO, businesswoman, and author turned joy nerd, Quinn O'Briant, joins me to talk about just what queer resilience looks like. That and more in episode 364, so stay tuned for Gay Talk Radio right here on Rainbow Country.
Hi, this is Emily Saliers from Indigo Girls.
Hey everyone, this is Chris Harder, porn star, burlesque performer, and the creator of Porn to Be a Star. You're listening to Rainbow Country with Mark Tara.
Well, hello and welcome to a brand new journey through Rainbow Country. As I like to call it, a little gay radio show working to give voice to the LGBT community and beyond. And as always, I am your tour guide through Rainbow Country. I'm producer and host, Mark Tara. By the way, Rainbow Country originates from CIUT-FM in Toronto, and now proudly in syndication on 12 outlets across Canada, from coast to coast to coast. The Yukon, British Columbia, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, the east coast of Canada in Newfoundland, Ontario, even down to Buffalo, New York, and online. Well, thanks to you tuning in, streaming, downloading, but ultimately listening. Together we continue to build Rainbow Country into a nationally syndicated gay radio show, a number one LGBT podcast on Podomatic.com's Gay and Lesbian chart, as well as being recognized as Canada's number one LGBT podcast on feedspot.com. So today, the Joy Boss, Quinn O'Briant, is my guest and joins me in conversation to talk about just what queer resilience looks like. She's a Sanford-educated former CEO who holds 2 master's degrees, a businesswoman, and author of 2 books. Plus, at one point, Quinn O'Briant filed for bankruptcy. She's here today to share her journey. Plus, in hour 2, music from LGBT artists, independent artists, voices how we've come to know and love in classic disco, classic 80s, classic house, and on this episode, I'm featuring some Canadian disco, some queer electronic, and more. All that lies ahead as we start Journey 364 through Rainbow Country. But first up, a special shout out to Peter B. Peter B, he's back again. He listens to Rainbow Country on CKCU-FM in Ottawa. And Peter B, today, he writes, quote, "Community radio is important, ! Once it hits the airwaves, there is no pulling it back, censoring, banning. It is now out in the wild. Love, pass hugs forward, G. McWidge." Unquote. Well, Peter B. from Ottawa, Canada's capital, I have to say, thank you again for sharing your thoughts and having your voice be heard. And by the way, if you have something on your mind, let me know, and I'll read your comments on air. You can send me an email, mark@marktara.com. You can find me on social media, @marktara, or however you choose to track me down. Up next, the Rainbow Country Bookstore. Today, begin Transmission, the trans allegories of the Matrix, tracking one person's transition journey from Thomas Anderson to Neo to Trinity. Writer of comics, screenplays, teleplays, and audio dramas, award-winning creator Tilly Bridges reads from her latest book, Begin Transmission, the trans allegories of the Matrix.
The Matrix is a confirmed and intentional trans allegory, written and directed by two transgender sisters, Lily and Lana Wachowski. They weren't out as trans when the first 3 movies or the Animatrix were made, but publicly came out as trans before the 4th movie. This changes the context for some of the films, which we'll discuss along the way. I want to remind you that these movies are fantastic humans versus machines sci-fi movies, and that the first absolutely revolutionized action movies and special effects, and there's also entire religious and philosophical metaphors to explore. All of those things are well worth discussing. The movies are so dense and have so many layers, I'm in awe as a writer. But I'm only going to talk about the trans allegories. Please don't take that as an indication I don't think those other things exist or aren't worth discussing. It's just that these allegories are so densely packed with detail about the trans experience that it's going to take this entire book to explain them. Note that the very name, Matrix, means a set of rules and procedures that define how something works. The society we all live in is our matrix, and yes, it does have you, well, many of you. It's the cisgender binary we're all forced into at birth without our consent. It restricts us and harms us in all sorts of ways, which these movies will show you time and again. Neo's our lead, and The Matrix is about his journey in coming to terms with the fact that he's transgender. Reloaded is about all the ways society comes for you once you're out as trans, and wondering if we would have transitioned if we knew how hard life would become. Revolutions is about dealing with our own internalized transphobia and where we might be able to go in the future, or where we hope society might go. Resurrections is about detransitioning and retransitioning, and the co-opting and erasure of trans voices. But we have to go in order for everything to make sense. Neo always presents as male in the movies, of course, but remember this is allegory, and the first movie was also made in 1999. Here we are over 20 years later, and we still don't have a transgender sci-fi action movie lead. We can't hold that against them. The surface level story is about Neo accepting that he's the one, and there will be much more on that later. But his journey is a trans one. His chosen name, Neo, literally means new. His dead name is Thomas Anderson. Thomas means twin, and Anderson means son of Andrew, and Andrew means manly or masculine. This means his name roughly translates to twin of the manly or masculine. This is your very first indicator of just how intentional these allegories are. You don't accidentally pick a name that means twin of the masculine for a trans allegory. And even if you somehow did, if that was the only evidence, then sure, maybe it's a coincidence. But it's only the tip of the tip of the tip of the iceberg. Morpheus, in mythology, is the god of dreams. In The Matrix, Morpheus is Neo's superego and subconscious, and knows of his dream to be his true self. He knows the truth about Neo and spends every movie trying to help him accept it. Cypher is Neo's id and his doubt. A cipher is literally a secret, a code that hides the truth. It plagues Neo, eating at him. His id is so sure that he's in fact not trans and would be all too happy to just never think about it again. Neo's doubt is later personified by Link and then Bugs, but those are very different kinds of doubt that we'll discuss when those characters appear. Trinity is Neo's self-actualization, the person he wishes to be. Her name alone tells you she's Neo, 1, the ego, Morpheus, 2, the superego, and Cypher, 3, the id, all rolled into one. Trinity's in balance, in harmony, a whole person. Also note, she is a woman. The other 3 are men. Neo has to reconcile these supposedly male aspects of himself if he ever wants to attain self-actualization. Note how similar Neo and Trinity look, even down to their hair. None of that's by accident. Everything in a movie is a choice. And not only does this also hold through all 4 movies, I submit to you it is the entire point of all 4 movies. They tell the journey of one person, from Thomas Anderson to Trinity. Agent Smith begins as the personification of society and the passive transphobia it exhibits by designing a system, the cisgender binary, that does not even account for the existence of transgender people. Over the course of the first movie and then through the sequels, he comes to represent active transphobia, the parts of society that acknowledge trans existence, only so they can then attack it and try to make it impossible for us to exist within it. Other important things to know before we start. The Oracle is Neo's heart, later replaced by Bugs. Tank is the trans community, later replaced by Zion and then Io. Locke is Neo's fear. Niobe is Neo's confidence. And the color red is vital to understanding all four movies, wherein it stands for unequivocal truth. Know that it stands for truth now, and the explanation for why that is will come early in discussing the first movie. Blue stands for doubt, and yellow for fear. Always. The mixture of these colors is also used to convey more complex things. Purple shows you there's truth and doubt. Orange shows you there's truth and fear. The green overcast of the original trilogy shows you the world the cisgender binary matrix has created is based in fear and doubt. Yellow plus blue equals green. All agents, police, and security guards across all movies are cis white men. This is also intentional. It's showing you who benefits from the false cisgender binary, who set it up, and who extracts power from it to keep themselves at the top. This is also why the architect and the analyst are cis white men. These are the bedrock of the allegories. The foundation of everything else is built on and used to say all that the Wachowskis have to say. The good news is these are explained to you through the movies themselves. We're going to go through them all in order, not exactly frame by frame, but it might as well be for as much as these movies have to say. To truly understand the allegories, you'll need to go in order and read them in the order written, in the order of the movie's release. Jumping ahead will only lead to confusion, so I don't recommend it. But technically you can if you want to. I mean, I'm not the boss of you. I can only show you the door. You're the one that has to walk through it.
Hi, this is Michael Anthony Alago, music executive, photographer, author, and you are listening to Rainbow Country with Mark Tara.
Up next, queer resilience. Quinn O'Briant. Hi.
That's me.
How are you?
Hi. I'm great. Delighted to be on your show.
I have to say, thank you so much for being here to have your voice, your story be heard by the LGBT community and beyond. So thank you for that, especially to talk about queer joy, to talk about money, to talk about queer resilience. You are known as the Joy Boss. So let's start there. The Joy
Absolutely.
Boss. How did you get this title, this moniker? How did this come about? Is this something that you gave to yourself, friends? Talk to me about this, because I love it.
Sure. Thank you. I did give it to myself.
Well done.
Thank you. We got to take care of ourselves first, right? So, I had been in a lot of different corners of business for a long time. And when COVID hit, I had a big realization, which is that even though joy was something I cared about a lot and I had studied, I learned a lot about it, I wasn't experiencing it in the ways that I was working and doing business and all those sort of things that we have to do to keep ourselves going. There was no joy in it. And I thought there's got to be a better way. And so I started, my first program that I created was called Joy-Based Business. And then as time went on, I thought, I'm cooler than that. Like, I'm a hot chick. I should be called the Joy Boss. So I renamed myself.
So you are a businesswoman. You are a former CEO. You've worked with corporations like Google. I believe you have 2 master's degrees.
Yeah.
Plus you've published 2 books. So here's Here's the question. The things that you've done, the things that you've accomplished, have you always approached these things with, say, a gratitude mindset, a joyful mindset? Have you always approached your life with this sort of mindset from the get-go?
What a beautiful question. What I have done is approach with curiosity, actually. And for a long time, that was what led me. And actually, so, I've been out as queer for 30 years. And my early work was all in the queer community. Like my very first quote unquote professional job was for a weekly LGBTQ magazine based here in Atlanta, where I live now, that no longer exists. It was called Etc. And really from that moment, it was a question of, well, what am I curious about next? And I worked for that magazine. Later, I worked for another one that was called Southern Voice. It was later renamed Georgia Voice and still exists. So I would go from, one thing to the next thinking, like, what am I interested in? And a lot of times, curiosity in hand, I think. So I feel joy. I really loved getting to do that kind of writing. And I got to interview some cool people and do some things that, I never thought I would get to do. And then my curiosity took me into, I think I should, see about a master's degree. And then later I wanted another one. And then took me into all these places of, big companies, Google, NCR, Equifax, huge corporations where I never thought there would be a place for someone like me. And eventually to founding my own company. So, it's been a lot of curiosity, and the joy I began to cultivate quite intentionally just over the last few years. And so that really changes everything. It changes how you work, but also changes who you are as a person.
So like I just mentioned, you are known as the Joy Boss. You offer programs teaching a joy-based approach to business, essentially. One of your programs is Change Your Life One Money Belief at a Time. Change Your Life One Money Belief at a Time. Talk to me about this program. What's this program about?
That one is actually completely free also, because I recognize that if you need to fix your money, some free things along the way could be super helpful as you get on that journey. So that's a free webinar. And so my program started with working with executives and business leaders, and then I wanted to do something specifically for entrepreneurs, people who have an idea, but they're not sure how to spark it, how to bring it to life. So I created the Joyful Entrepreneur. And then my most recent course is the Joy and Money Mindset course, which is really about changing your whole life, but starting with your joy practices around money. And so this is a little offering from that bigger program. And what I have discovered is that most of us are running toxic beliefs about money that we are not even aware of. And because we're running these kinds of scripts, we might be self-sabotaging in ways that we're not even aware of, or simply not seeing opportunities that are in front of us. And I do want to tie this back to queer experience, because this has been impactful for me. And there are very few sort of venues for this conversation. But when I was starting out in my career, which was in the mid-90s, I didn't feel like I could be in a major corporation. I felt like queer-owned companies were probably the only place that I could be out in the way that I wanted to be, that would feel authentic to myself. And while those were some great opportunities, they also were not very good financial opportunities for me. So one of the ways that I kind of stayed in some scarcity in the earlier part of my life is that I was trying to also stay in places where I could be out, where I would not, face a penalty for that or have to deal with a lot of discrimination in the workplace based on my identity. So those things are definitely tied in. And one belief that I had to excavate for myself was do I believe I belong wherever the hell I want to be? The answer is now yes. So the free webinar is it's teaching the strategy of finding a belief, getting an embodied experience of what a joyful belief feels like, and then examining that belief in light of it. So does this belief feel joyful to me? If it does, it's probably a good one. And if it doesn't, you know that in your body immediately, because joy is an embodied experience. And then I walk the participants through, how do we rewrite this? And then how do we get it to stick? So, because once you've created a new belief, you're going to unconsciously just start to create that reality for yourself once you've really shifted it.
Yeah, money's the root of all evil.
It's the root of a lot. Scarcity, worth, lack, feelings of being loved or unloved. I mean, it goes deep.
I think a lot of us have that mentality, like money's the root of all evil, you know? Mm-hmm. Okay, you just mentioned it earlier, joy and the money mindset. This is another program of yours. Talk to me, you were just talking about it there, but talk to me about this a bit more.
Yeah, sure. So here's the thing. If we are in money stress, which almost everyone is, because, and I know you're based in Canada, especially here in the US, I feel the brand of capitalism that we are working with does not have the human side that it needs, right? So we are in a system that tends to produce feelings of shame and failure and a lot of stress around money. And what we do, because we're just human beings, is we take that on and we think, well, this must be something about me. And we take in those feelings and apply them to ourselves. And then we're stuck in a downward spiral because, maybe you make one bad choice and you can really be off to the races with a lot of negativity around money. So we want to understand and shape, like, what are the circumstances that we're in? And what is my story about money? It goes beyond beliefs, but like, what were my experiences? And if I were to write from right now, what I think about the future, what do I think my future with money is? And is that a future that I want? So if not, we need to rewrite that. And for almost everyone, we need to rewrite it because we're living in a story that creates incredible amounts of just that grinding, gut-wrenching feeling. And Mark, part of my story is that when I was in my late 20s, I declared bankruptcy. And I'm very financially comfortable now. I changed things in ways that I could never, ever have imagined then. And so that was a lot of the motivation behind creating this program, is to take all the tools that I learned along the way that shifted my mindset and offer them to other people. One thing I have found is that we tend to start with things like budgeting apps and books about accounting, and those things can be incredibly helpful. But if you haven't healed your relationship with money, if you haven't healed your own traumas around finances and money, it's going to be very, very hard to make good use of those things because your mind is in this place of fear and scarcity, feelings perhaps of shame and failure that make it very difficult to do some practical thing like get out a spreadsheet and start adding things up. Yeah.
So when we're talking about, money, we're talking about joyfulness, we don't necessarily think about technology. We don't necessarily think about artificial intelligence. But you have more joy with AI?
Yeah, I made that.
What is more joy with AI? Artificial intelligence.
Yeah. Have you tried ChatGPT yet?
I have.
Well, it's pretty cool, right?
It's, it's interesting.
Yes.
I found it very creative, but also somewhat not accurate.
Yes, 100% it is. So I was playing around with ChatGPT, and I thought, This is actually bringing me a lot of joy. And so I came up with, because I'm always looking for joy. So I came up with a bunch of different prompts, and if you put them into ChatGPT, what it will spit, it probably is different for everybody, but whatever it will spit out to you will be something fun that hopefully will bring you some joy. Like I wanted to have it write my obituary. I thought that might be fun, but it said no because I'm still living, so that didn't work. So I had to go through a whole process of finding things that I thought would genuinely be joyful, but that also ChatGPT was okay with. So it's just a fun piece for people to play with and engage with. And so,
and this is on your website.
Yeah, you can just download. If you go to my TikTok or my Instagram, you can look on my link tree, and it's right there. You can just download it, and it has a little workbook. And try those. It also has instructions on how to use ChatGPT in case anybody's unfamiliar with it. So, so I just thought that would be fun, and people seem to like it, and it's just a way to have a little offering out in the world. But yeah, I think we can't. Technology is not going to create any joy by itself. It's what we do with it. And ultimately, because we are human, it has to start on the inside.
What's that?
That's what I'm trying to get out into the world, and using my own experiences and healing, and also years of sort of being in business and navigating this current system with increasing success over the years. But as I tell people a lot, you want to go up and to the right, but it's not going to be like that every day. There's always ups and downs along the way. And so part of the mindset course and part of what I'm teaching is about building resilience, which I think is a beautiful thing that those of us in the queer community have and have had to have, is this ability to, dust ourselves up, get back up, and try again.
And on that note, we'll return right after this.
Hi, I'm Paul Poirier, Canadian champion in ice dance and 3-time Olympian, and you're listening to Rainbow Country with Mark Tara.
Hitmakers is a full-service, award-winning record label and social enterprise based in Iqaluit, Nunavut. We specialize in the creating and marketing of world-class Inuit and Indigenous music, including pop, hip-hop, rock, folk, and traditional Inuit music. Hitmakers has studios in Iqaluit, Ottawa, and Toronto. The label currently works with more than 20 Inuit and Indigenous artists, and we represent and promote many more. The company was founded in 2016, and our mission is to create viable careers in the arts for Inuit and Indigenous artists through music, media, and education. Our secondary mission is to empower artists to share and strengthen their stories and culture. To learn more, please connect with us on social media or at hitmakers.com. That's Hitmakers with a Z. Thanks for listening. Qoyanamik.
Hi, my name is Joanne Vanicola, and I'm an actor and a writer, and I was first on Rainbow Country with Mark Tara on discussing the massacre at Pulse Club in Orlando. I realized how important it was for our community to have a radio station, specifically for our issues, to talk about people in the LGBTQ community and to provide an outlet for our stories, to discuss our politics, culture, and give voice to the issues that matter to us. And of course our artists and the things that we do globally, and talk about culture. And without people like Mark Tara providing a space for this with a radio show like this, then we wouldn't have that voice. So support, tune in. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Eric Radford, Olympic and world champion figure skater, pianist, and composer, and you're listening to Rainbow Country with Mark Tara.
Joy, happiness, contentment. How do you see these three words? Do you think that these are basically the same thing, just semantics? Or do you think that they're different? Joy, happiness, contentment. How do you see these words?
What a great, just hearing you say them makes me feel contentment. I think it's your voice. So this is an important distinction, and one that's maybe a little confusing as people start to think about what joy means. So I think of joy as it's a deep emotion. It resonates really deep within the body, and it is closely tied to purpose and meaning. So when we feel joy, it could be like fizzy and happy and laughter feeling, but it could also be like a deep, deep purposeful satisfaction. And when we can tie that to an experience with money where, the money that we have or that we are bringing into our possession is tied to purpose, that like generates the engine in a really big way. So that's kind of my area of focus. Contentment is also a beautiful thing. I think contentment is being able to sit with sort of a sense of peace and pleasure with just what is. And a beautiful thing to cultivate. What was the other word you said?
Happiness.
Happiness, yeah. I love happiness. That was actually where my studies began. I was curious. Well, actually, to start, I was curious about fun because I noticed, people often describe something as being fun, but I thought, well, I don't really know what that means. Like, how do you know if you're having fun?
Because one person's fun could be another person's like nightmare.
Exactly.
You never know.
You never know. So it's got to be an individual experience, a collective experience. It's got to be an individual experience. So I started reading up about fun, and that was because I'm a big nerd, Mark. And if I want to know something, I'll try to read about it. So I got curious about what that was, and many years ago, not many, but maybe 10 years ago, some meditation teachers put out a really beautiful book called Awakening Joy. And that got me interested in the concepts of joy. So I think happiness is one of the joy flavors. It's like, if you think about it like music, it's sort of a higher pitched one. It might not be tied to the same depths of purpose, meaning, spiritual meaning, if that's your jam. It's my jam. But to be happy, I think, is a really worthwhile goal. And what's beautiful about all of these things is how they ripple out. So a lot of times we think about, well, if I make myself happy, that might be selfish, or if I'm content, or if I'm joyful, those things might be selfish. But actually, imagine what it would do for the whole world if just like 25% of us were genuinely happy. It'd be a whole different place we would live. So I think teaching yourself to cultivate joy, to find joy, to have that in your awareness at all times, not only does it change you, but when you change everything around you in a beautiful ripple effect. And because money is so pervasive, because it has gotten wrongly tied into feelings of worth and value and love, then it's like taking on almost the hardest thing. And then if you could be joyful there, you're gonna have so much more in the rest of your life and in the lives of all the people that you touch, whether you're aware of it or not.
You mentioned earlier that at one point you were bankrupt. You went bankrupt.
Yeah.
Was that the trigger for you to start yourself on this self-discovery, this joyful mindset path?
Indirectly. So the bankruptcy, I had just been going along in my 20s trying to do the things that I thought I was supposed to do. And I had saved up $10,000. I had a full-time job. I had a part-time job. I was doing the things that I thought were, this is what you're supposed to do. And so at that time, I had a choice. I thought, well, I could take this money and make a down payment on a house, or I could take it to Europe and travel and see how long I can make it last. Now, I had never been anywhere, and I desperately wanted to travel. But I didn't go with my joy. I went with the thing that I thought was the supposed to do, right? The responsible thing. And it turned out to be a total catastrophe. So I got an early lesson in not following my joy. But it took me a long time to put it together. So the house turned out not to have much value at all, but I was on the hook for a mortgage. And so that was kind of how the bankruptcy got rolling. And, in the years that followed, I very much felt like a failure. I felt the big feeling that I had was that I couldn't be trusted with money. So it took me a long time to get financially stable enough and emotionally stable enough from this big upset to be able to really look at it and to go, you know what? Should have gone to Italy. Even if I'd come back with no money, I would have come back with the richness of all this experience that I didn't get to have, But it also, what I could see is that, bankruptcy in itself is easy, and it's actually not a huge deal. Nobody tells you that, but it's true. Like, the logistics of a bankruptcy are not huge. What is huge is how it's perceived and how you feel about it. So I got really clear in those years that while what had happened is simply that my debt got wiped out and now I had shitty credit. Well, a lot of people have shitty credit. It's not news. And every time I would explain to someone what had happened, like a potential landlord or whatever, they'd be like, oh, okay, I understand, So it was changing the way that I thought about myself and the way that I thought about money that really set me on the path.
Be a great tutor. Glitter Girl.
Oh, look at you. You're going back in the archives now.
These are your two books that you published on Amazon.ca. They both have a rating of 4 out of 5 stars. So congrats on that.
Thank you.
What inspired you to release these books?
Well, I've been a writer since I was, I guess, about 6 years old. So, in fact, when I graduated from college, they go around, they ask you, what are your ambitions? And I said, I'm going to be a famous lesbian writer. So what's funny is that I'm not famous and I'm also not a lesbian, but I am a writer. So, anyway, I really wanted to write something good. I had been a newspaper and magazine writer, but journalism is its own kind of thing, and you have to write really fast, and it's not creative. And so I went to get my MFA in creative writing back in the early aughts. Little funny sidebar is I was 31, I think. No, 30. I thought I was way too old to be going back to school, which was funny to me now. I was one of the youngest people there. So I went, and my professor said that she really didn't like to work with short story writers, so she wanted me to write a novel. And I was so intimidated that I was like, okay. But I had, in the immediate aftermath of the bankruptcy, I had not been able to find a job in writing or editing or any of the things that I had, trained to do. And so I took a job selling glitter spray at Macy's in the cosmetics department. And people would come down the escalator, and my job was to ask them if they wanted to put glitter spray in their hair and try to sell it to them, which felt very humiliating, compared to what I had been doing before. But it was a job, and a decent paying job too. And so what I did was I just took notes. and eventually wrote this novel about this young woman who is a glitter spray salesperson. And so that was the inspiration behind that book. And then in future years, I had a long stint teaching. I still love teaching, and I teach part-time at Emory University sometimes. I'm taking a semester off right now, but I often will do a little side gig teaching because it just fills my cup. For several years, I taught at City College of San Francisco, and along the way, I was tutoring. And so I had a little tutoring business on the side, and I was teaching, and I had some ideas about how tutoring should be done. And I thought, well, let me see if I already wrote this other book. Let me see if I can do another one. So I put that out into the world. Fun fact, it is also in Russian. A Russian publisher contacted me and said, we'd like to buy the rights to your book and publish it in Russian. And I didn't know if it was a scam or not, but I was like, well, okay. So they sent me a check for $500, which was awesome. And then maybe 6 months later in the mail, I get 2 copies of my book in Russian. And there's a picture of me on the back, but I can't read any of the rest of it. So I don't know what it says, but I have them in my house. And I think there's more books to come. I just took a little book writing hiatus for a bit.
So earlier you mentioned that this is the 30th year of you coming out?
Yeah.
Coming out as what?
Yeah. So when I first came out at 19, I came out as bi. And then I discovered that among the young lesbians at my college, they would not have anything to do with a woman who identified as bi. And I think there's still some of that in the community today, but it was pretty strong back then. And I really felt like I was sort of leaning towards women. I was more interested in women than men. So eventually I just decided that I would identify as a lesbian, even if that was not, quite the complex truth of myself. And so for about 20 years, I only dated women. I married my now ex-wife, and we were together for 10 years.
Wow.
We're friends now. So, but, after we split up, I thought, there's a whole other team. let's go check it out. So I sort of came out as bi, and actually pansexual would fit me better. So that's my most preferred identity, but not everybody knows what it is. And so, if a random person asks me, I say I'm bi. If a queer person who's knowledgeable about such things asks, I would say I'm pan.
Well said. Do you have a lot of clients that are part of the community, part of the LGBT community?
Definitely some, but I wouldn't say that's the overarching community. I find that a lot of women are interested in my work, just women in general are interested in my work. I think there's a sense of solidarity with, other women who've kind of been out in the world of money and business and have figured out how to navigate that. But people surprise me all the time, and I do make a point of coming out, and then somebody that I had no idea would be like, oh, guess what? I have a girlfriend or, whatever. So I feel like, your show is part of this, and all the things that we do, like, these are ways to create safety for other people. Like, I'm 3 decades in, I'm good. You know what I mean? I'm good. But I know that a lot of people are not. I know that a lot of people are still struggling to figure out who they are, to be themselves, to feel like they can be their whole selves in various environments. So my goal is to try to make that possible for them, even as they may be evolving, right? These things do change. You're not necessarily the same person not at all the same person at 19 that I am at 49. Goodness.
Queer resilience.
Yeah.
What is queer resilience?
Well, this is something I was pointing to a little bit before, is that we as queer people have a specific set of challenges, and it changes for us as individuals and our circumstances and our where we move in intersectionality. But generally, as a community, we have had to develop resilience. 30 years of queerness has given me a pretty good view of, an interesting slice of queer history. I mean, from my coming out in, what was that, 1993, to today, so much has changed. But consistently, we have had to fight for our marriages, fight for our families. I mean, I vividly remember when gay marriage was not even a possibility, and lesbians routinely had their children taken away, and continuing to today, we see some members of our community, particularly members of the trans community, just under terrible attack. And so to survive, we have to develop resilience, whether we want to or not. It's not really a choice. Mm-hmm. But that resilience serves us well. And I think as a community, we understand the experience of being knocked down and having to get back up. And we are pretty good at helping each other. I mean, one of the reasons that I wanted to be a lesbian back in the day is that the community is so powerful, that sense of community. And as a community, we understand resilience. And we also understand that you cannot do things by yourself. There's no real individualism. I mean, there's a little bit, but mostly we have to do things together. And so I think that we have resilience not only within ourselves, but also within our communities that we can draw on when things get hard. And things are hard for a lot of people. But as queer folk, we get a double dose or a triple dose or a quadruple dose, kind of depending on who we are and what's going on.
Mm-hmm. Especially these days, especially in America, there's a real crackdown for whatever reason when it comes to the LGBT community. And in 2023, it's just mind-boggling to me.
It is mind-boggling. We are in a terrible backlash against the gains that have been made. And this is exactly what queer resilience is about. I mean, we're not going to lose in the long run, but we have to be together. We have to band together and tap that resilience that got us through, the 50s when it was just straight up illegal to be gay, through all the events of our recent history that have seemed, at times like almost too good to be true. I mean, I remember when gay marriage was, President Obama made gay marriage legal, and it was just like, it felt like a miracle. Mm-hmm. But what was a miracle to queer people was a nightmare to people who are not in support of gay rights and LGBTQ plus rights, right? Yeah. And so they got on the move. They banded together. So we have to stay with each other.
So Quinn, here's my last question for you. What would you say to someone who wants to lead a more joyful life or have an approach when it comes to finding that joyful mindset in whether it's in business, whether it's in their life, in whatever in the times that we are living in, to find the joy in life these days? What would you say to someone?
I think I have two things. One is I'm going to speak very briefly about neuroplasticity. So neuroplasticity is the quality of our minds that is plastic, that it can literally be changed. For a long time, the general belief was that our brains are kind of fixed once we're adults. But that is not true. we can literally change our brains with practice and intention. So we can tune our brains to the frequency of joy. We can tune our mind and body to the frequency of joy with intentional practice. And one of those practices is the free webinar. So like I offer that happily to anyone who would like to access it. But when people meet me, they're like, oh yeah, I get the joy thing. Like pretty much no matter what's going on, it's not that I'm not serious. It's not that I don't cry or feel grief or fear or any of those human emotions, but like my baseline is joy. So I'm going to get back there quick. And that's just years of practice. The other thing is that we queer people, and also pretty much everyone living under capitalism who isn't part of the really super wealthy elite, has a lot of trauma. And I'm not a therapist. I'm not a practitioner of any trauma treatments, but I am a big advocate of understanding the traumas that we have experienced and intentionally healing them. And those two things go together. So there's some really incredible tools out there. I TikTok about this a lot. I'm at Joy Boss Babe is my handle, and I TikTok about this so that I can share some of the different modalities. I've tried everything I could think of, and it's been very effective. Each one with like a different piece. So I think, when we can start to be aware of trauma and heal that, be in support of that, and then also, understand that we have the power to shift our experience. We can't necessarily control everything for sure, but we can change how our brains work. I mean, we've seen this for many, many years of meditation, but you can do it. You can tune to peace, you can tune to contentment, but you can also tune that to joy. And that's what I have chosen to do. And that's what I'm teaching.
Well said. Well said.
Thank
Quinn
you.
O'Briant, I have to say, well said, well done. Thank you for your time. Thanks for...
Such a pleasure talking to you. Thank you.
Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you so much.
By the way, listeners of Rainbow Country can use the promo code RAINBOW and receive a $200 discount off of the Joy and Money Mindset course. The Joy and Money Mindset course. For more information, simply visit joybasedbusiness.com.
Glad Day Bookshop started in Gerald Moldenhauer's backpack around 1972. Gerald figured that to build community we needed access to our history, our culture, our literature, our porn. He started schlepping books and magazines from one queer event to another to sell. As the collection got bigger, he moved it to a hall in the commune where he lived, in an old house on Seton Street in downtown Toronto. In those days, to see the books, you needed to phone first to make an appointment to come over. Glad Day finally opened a fully fledged store in the late 1970s, and that's when the more public profiles started causing problems. An issue with the Canadian book business is that a lot of titles are published elsewhere and therefore need to be imported, and that means they all have to pass through Canada Customs. And Canada Customs in those days was not about to let dirty, smutty, queer literature cross the border to corrupt innocent Canadians. Glad Day started having books seized and shipments blocked starting in 1977. It got worse in the 80s. Even The Joy of Gay Sex got banned as obscene. And even if books got through customs, they were still not safe. In April 82, police raided Glad Day and charged employee Kevin Orr with selling obscene material. And that wouldn't be the last raid. Glad Day was embroiled in court cases for years. Some American publications actually started producing special Canadian editions with pages blanked out to get them across the border. In 1983, partners Bruce Smythe and Jim Deva started a gay bookstore in Vancouver called Little Sisters. Little Sisters was soon experiencing customs seizures as well. What was infuriating was that big mainstream bookstores were now importing and selling many of the same titles without a problem. It was just small gay-run bookstores that were being targeted. Little Sisters also fought the custom seizures through the courts, but it took years and thousands of dollars before the Supreme Court finally decided that the seizures were a violation of the Charter of Rights. That was in 2000. Customs still had the right to stop materials, but the onus was on them to prove they were obscene. Customs censorship finally began to grind to a halt. By this time, queer material was widely available, and the digital age meant that borders were being largely irrelevant anyway. But today, both Glad Day and Little Sisters continue to operate as bookstores. Glad Day is actually the oldest surviving gay bookstore in the world. So if you are in Toronto or Vancouver, be sure to check them out. They're part of the living history of our community. This is Tim McCaskill, author of Queer Progress.
The phone rings. I got a message from the mayor. He's going to call me back the next day. I get the call, and he said, if you'd accept, we'd like to honor you with the key to the city. There was an event later that year in May. Just a key, right? Like, key to what? A decent job, a good singing career. It's really a metaphor, but it's history. So a reporter wants to talk to me and says, so it's a key, right? Like, what's the big deal? I said, well, not everybody gets the key. So I looked it up, and I guess it is kind of a big deal.
The date, May 17th, 2018, when trans activist Susan Gapka made history by becoming the first trans woman to be presented with the key to the city of Toronto. By the way, past recipients include Rush and the Raptors. And just like that, this little gay journey through Rainbow Country has come to an end. For the full 2-hour episode, simply head over to marktara.com, where everything is connected, and hit the archives banner. To keep up to date with the show, check out the socials at Mark Tara. The edited podcast is available on all major platforms. And finally, I want to take this time to thank you for taking your time to be with me. Remember, despite all the craziness in the world these days, know this, that we are living in days of making dreams come true, so believe in yourself. And the world will believe in you.
Hi, this is Police Constable Danielle Botno, also known as LGBT Cop, and you're listening to Rainbow Country with Mark Tara.